I would like to talk about Ubisoft. It's a video games company and they are from France and they have a market cap of around $3 billion, which is quite small. So it's an interesting company because they produce a lot of games. Example, Assassin's Creed, Avatar, and Far Cry 6 is also popular. And they have also many other games and other franchises that you can see here. So if we take a look at the chart, we can see they are down close to 20% for this year. And if we look 5 years, it's even worse. It's close to 70%. So that's a lot of decrease over the year. So if we look the max chart, it's okay. They're still in profit for around 10 years. So let's take a look at the financial foundation. So for me, the important thing is revenue growth over the years. So let's take a look at Ubisoft revenue growth. So we would like to see the 5 years, how they did in 5 years. So if we consider 2019, it would be that in 2020 it decreased because of COVID mainly. Then it increased again and decreased and decreased significantly again. So over the 5 years, it's actually a revenue decline. So this would be an X for the revenue growth. So the next thing would be free cash flow growth, because free cash flow is used to pay dividends and buy back shares. So we want it to grow over the years. So we can see from 2019, they had over 1 billion in free cash flow, what is really much for that company. And then over COVID, it decreased. Understandable, actually. And then it increased again and it decreased and decreased. So it not only decreased in 2020, it was minus free cash flow, and the last 2 years is also the negative free cash flow. So that's really, really bad. But it's quite understandable for a video games company because they need to invest a lot of money in games and they cannot release every game instantly and it takes time for them to release it. So it's understandable, but it's still an X. So the next thing would be free cash flow yield over 4%. So obviously they have a negative free cash flow. So it would already be impossible for them, but we can still calculate the negative free cash flow to see how much money they're losing. So we can take the 372 and we have here the market cap of 3 billion. So it's right, 3,000 million. And let's calculate it. Okay. Okay, that's 12% actually. And yeah, so they lose 12% of their market cap in free cash flow. So that's not good to see. The next thing we would like to see is debt divided by free cash flow under 5. So it means that they can pay the debt in under 5 years with the free cash flow. So this is already an X because they have a negative free cash flow. But instead, we can take a look at the balance sheet. So let's take a look at their long-term debt. So we can see over the years, it increased a lot. And it's very high right now with 2.4 billion. So we can also take a look at their cash on hand, because this is their money they have in the bank. And that's quite a lot, but it's still, compared to the debt, it's still not great. So they have a lot of cash on hand, but it's also decreasing since 2021 and the debt is increasing. So it's definitely not looking good for them. So if we look at the shares outstanding, we can also see it increased over the years. It means they offering more shares and collecting money through it. So that's also quite negative, but understandable because they not have the good balance sheet, so they cannot really afford to buy back shares. So that's also an X. So actually all the financial foundation is an X, so that's not looking good. So let's take a look at the pros of investing in Ubisoft. So first I would say they have a strong portfolio. They're not relying on one game. They have different popular games. Then the second thing would be growth potential. So nowadays young people like to play video games. It's become popular and there are more and more people who are willing to buy games and play video games online. The last thing would be potential buyout. So nowadays we see big players like Microsoft investing a lot of money in video games. So I can see the potential that Sony or maybe Microsoft or even Tencent will try to buy Ubisoft at the higher price. So this could make the potential return in the stock price. Let's talk about the cons of investing in Ubisoft. So obviously they have a high competition. There are many different game companies and even like strong players like Microsoft and Sony. So they have a disadvantage because they have less money to finance their video games. Also, we can see the high production cost of video games. So they need to spending a lot of money to finance the video games, but they don't necessarily know if they will succeed with these video games. The third thing would be bad financials. So we can see they have the negative free cash flow. They also have a lot of debt, so that's not looking good. The last thing would be dependence on key franchisees. So they have the main video games that they produce and they take the most money in certain video games, and they really need these video games to succeed because they're spending the most money they have on their very important franchisees. So if they cannot get the attention and their sales with this video game, then the company will become in a very difficult financial situation. So my conclusion would be it's way too risky to investing in Ubisoft. Even it seems low priced with this low market cap, and the potential buyout is also looking interesting. So definitely there could be some companies that will buy Ubisoft in the future. But still, I think the risk is too high because they have a lot of debt, they have a negative free cash flow, and it's just not looking that great. So also I saw like many people complaining about the video games nowadays. They are not really satisfied with the quality and everything. So I would not really invest in Ubisoft. Maybe only in the short term, but that also has definitely the high risk.